What if I told you I had a foolproof, guaranteed way to get your campfire going first time, every single time? And that the most important thing wasn't fire lighters, wasn't even a little hatchet. It is in fact one of these. Let me show you a guaranteed way to take the stress and the hassle and the fuss out of getting your campfire going. And the very first thing that you've got to do is figure out where you're going to put your campfire. Now I know that might sound basic, but it's not always as simple as you first would think. Yes, you can just put it on the ground. A ground fire is something that everyone has used over the years. But there's a couple of things that aren't quite optimal about ground fires. So the problem is ground fires are nowhere near as efficient with the heat that they produce as you would get when you're using a portable fire pit like this steel one that I've got here. This one raises the fire up off the cold ground so you don't lose all that heat down into the ground. The other thing you'll find is when you're using a fire pit like that, you'll go through a lesser amount of wood for the given size of the fire. And that means the fire's going to burn for longer on those colder nights. And the other thing that's great about these portable fire pits is from a sustainability point of view. If you get to a nice campsite that's full of beautiful lush green grass, the last thing you should do is just start a fire anywhere, and all you're going to do is leave scorched marks all over the campground wherever you've had that fire. Much better idea. Fire pit keeps it up off the ground. At the end, all you got to do is empty the ashes into an existing fire pit, even if it's not where you've actually camped, even if it's the other side of the campsite. And when you leave, there will be no trace that you've ever been there. So what do you need? Well, very quickly, we definitely need some firewood to burn. We need some fire lighters. I've got a lighter over there as well. I've got my axe to chop the firewood, but I've also got a little sledgehammer, and I'll show you in a second why I've got that. So to start this fire, we need some kindling. We need some nice little thin pieces of wood that we can put on the fire first, get them going, and once they've ignited, then we can put the bigger pieces of wood on top of the fire. And to get that kindling, we're gonna have to split these big pieces of firewood. Now, it is a bit of work splitting firewood, but I wanna show you how, with a little hatchet and a little sledgehammer, you can take 80% of the effort out of splitting firewood for kindling. So what I've got over here is a nice flat piece of firewood. We're gonna use this for a base to chop our firewood up. Because if you try and split that firewood on the ground, every single blow, a huge amount of the energy that comes from each blow is just going to be transferred down into the ground, and it's just wasted energy. So instead, we've got our piece that we're going to split. It's going to go on top of that support piece that we had here. Nice flat piece. Now, little hatchet, something that every single camper should carry in the back of their car with them. But instead of just standing up and taking big full swings at the firewood in the hopes that we're going to split it, we're going to do it a lot more controlled, a lot more safe, and I'm going to show you how to do it a lot smarter too. So what we'll do is inspect the wood for any existing cracks that will help us in splitting the wood up. We'll also have a look at the way that the grain runs, the way that the lines run through the wood. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with the grain. We'll split the timber with the grain. That way it will split a lot easier. The trick is to wedge the axe into the wood a little way and then use the sledgehammer on the back of the axe head to drive it down through. Doing this lets you split firewood in a much more controlled and efficient way. So that's about the size of the kindling that you're looking for. Definitely no bigger than that. So I reckon we're going to need probably 10 or 15 of these pieces, and then we'll be able to start this fire. Cool, so I'm happy with that amount of kindling. I reckon that'll get it going nicely. The other thing that'll definitely get it going nicely are fire lighters. Look, yes, you could sit there all day with a couple of sticks, rubbing them together, and eventually you might be able to get a fire going. Much better idea are fire lighters. I really like these natural fire lighters. For one, they don't give off a really toxic, unnatural sort of fume when they're lighting. The other thing is they just work really well. So just a bunch of these will work really well. What we're going to do is we're going to build them up at the bottom of the fire pit before we put the wood in. So while I do this, I just want to take a moment and ask you what the craziest thing is that you've ever seen or even used yourself to start a fire in place of actual fire lighters. I've heard of all different things. Corn chips, I mean, I'd personally rather eat them than use them to start a fire, but whatever. Vaseline, cotton wool buds, heaps of different things. Jump on down to those comments and let me know. Now, definitely don't be shy with those fire lighters. Yes, they're worth their weight in gold, but they're also cheap. So chuck a heap of them in there because you want to get this fire started. It's all about getting it started nice and quickly. So back to that kindling now. General rule, thinnest pieces first. These will take quicker than the thicker pieces, and when these are taken, just start adding those bigger pieces on. Now, if you've got a campfire with a nice flat bottom, What you want to do is the pyramid trick. You basically want to stack the firewood in a pyramid shape. You can add extra pieces all the way around it, but what you're doing is you're making sure there's a heap of air at the bottom in the middle of the fire, because fires need oxygen. So the more oxygen you can give that fire, the better it'll take. But with this fire pit, we don't have a flat bottom. It comes down to a V at the bottom. So keeping in mind that idea of an air gap, I'm gonna stack the kindling that I've chopped across the top of the firelighters with as much air underneath as possible. Worst thing that you can do when you're starting a fire is smother it. If you can't get oxygen into it, it's just not gonna take. So the temptation right now is just to pile firewood on, but you are guaranteed you're gonna smother your fire if you do that. So what you need to do is definitely take a step back just for a second, give it a couple of minutes, just make sure that all of that kindling is starting to take. As it starts to take, you can progressively start putting thicker and thicker pieces on. I've still got a fair few of these nice thin pieces I'm gonna use up first. So now that kindling's really starting to take nicely, you can go back to that idea of building that pyramid that we talked about a moment ago. Even if we don't have a flat bottom on the bottom of our fire like this one here, you can still do it. It doesn't have to be precise, just has to have some sort of shape to it. The idea is it's funneling the heat up. As it's going, the flames are licking up, they're sucking oxygen from the bottom, heat's rising, it's all happening really nicely. So as you can see, that is now going beautifully. The worst thing you can do at the stage here is smother your fire. So medium-sized bits next. And once again, we'll still go for that pyramid idea because we don't want to smother the fire. We don't want to put it out. It's just as easy to put it out at this stage as it is at the very beginning stage. So medium pieces next, and then once it's roaring, then the big ones. Now, if you liked those tips, then I guarantee you are going to love our Beginner's Guide to Camping series. In it, we go through everything to make sure that your camping experiences are absolutely unforgettable. How to choose the right camping accommodation for you, how to cook and eat better on the road, and even how to add serious amounts of luxury to your campsite. It's all right there, and it's all ready to watch right now.